programs that we have. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of our speakers and Alex, our moderator today, for their participation and sharing their thoughts on this really timely topic. Obviously with COVID, this is, I think, learning online, obviously a very important timely topic. So we really appreciate your participation and making time in your schedules to speak with the SID-W community. I also like to point out our wonderful co-chairs who helped plan all these events for the education work group and do this in their spare time. So we really appreciate their support. So Kara McBride and Alyssa Phillips, thank you as always for helping us put these events together. So we appreciate your support. I will just plug really quickly just one event that's coming up that may be of interest to some of you on this call and for some of your organizations as well. Our career fair, which is coming up on February 5th, as a Friday. So if anyone's interested in that, it's going to be basically what we do in person, but just virtually instead. So it should be a really interesting, a really great, interesting event for those who are wanting to look for folks or just want to get their name out there organizationally, or just look for, if you're looking for a job or anything like that. I think will be a really great event. We are working on the program right now, but I think it's going to be a really great agenda. So if you're interested, registration is now open on our website. You can go straight to our website and pay straight from there. So feel free to sign up there, and you can get all the most up to date information on our website. We're still working, as I said, the agenda is not finalized yet, so we'll hopefully have that up soon, but registration at least is open in the meantime. And with that, I will stop talking because I don't want to take up too much more time, and I'll hand it over to Kara to get us started today.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Welcome, everybody. We're very glad to have you here at this event of the Education for Development Work Group. Our next two meetings or events that we're going to be having will be focusing on race and social justice within education. So stay tuned to be hearing about that. We anticipate that one of them will have a kind of workshopping kind of format. So we're excited about that. And if you're interested in joining the work group and being part of the preparation, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or the other co-chair of the Education for Development Work Group, Alyssa Phillips. And thank you very much. And I'd like to just dive right into this very exciting topic. So Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kara. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you may be. Very glad to be a part of this series. My name is Alex Twino. I am a senior education and technology specialist at the World Bank, and today I'll be moderating this session. Let me start by kind of giving a few reflections on the topic that we have today, lifelong learning, especially in the age of online learning, and what the opportunities are. I wanted to start by, I was reflecting on the definition of lifelong learning. And while everybody agrees that, it's the continuous acquisition of knowledge, skills, and competencies for one's professional development or personal development, I think there's also a very interesting definition of lifelong learning. And I think that is the pursuit of happiness, because knowledge is, at least for me, is a fundamental part of being happy, knowing things. This concept of lifelong learning has been around for a very long time, kind of formalized in the, I guess, 60s, 70s. Really took center stage, in kind of in the 90s and the early 2000s with the emergence of what some people call the knowledge economy, where knowledge was seen as supplanting really all the other essential ingredients for social and economic development. And for many years, lifelong learning has also been associated with adult education. It has a very strong linkage to distance education, everything from correspondence schools. And with the rise of the internet in the 1990s and then the 2000s, a lot of lifelong learning kind of programs moved online. And it was also felt that the internet will democratize learning. And this is where things get interesting. From, on my day-to-day work, I deal a lot with technology. I believe that technology fundamentally allows us to do two interesting things. It allows us to do things that we are doing today at scale, much more cost effectively. But it also allows us to do things that we were not able to do before. And I think that for me, those two concepts are really what makes technology very powerful. And that really led to the MOOC era, right? And the whole concept of democratizing learning, being able to learn anywhere, anytime at kind of an affordable effort. And much more recently, well, last year to be precise, what was a series of experiments, things that were being done at a small scale by a few innovative people, some of whom are going to speak today, became really a mandatory thing with COVID, right? The world moved online not only for learning, but for work and for commerce. And so we are in this age where, online learning is no longer restricted, to a few universities, a few researchers. It is, everybody has experienced it. Everybody has directly experienced it. And this raises very interesting opportunities for going forward. I will end my reflection by saying that I hope that we do learn from the long history of online and remote learning. I'm kind of surprised sometimes when people talk about the challenges that have risen around COVID and everybody moving online, because we've known these challenges for a very, very long time. We've known that when remote learning inevitably raises issues of quality, that it raises issues of equity, that it raises issues of accessibility, it raises issues of high dropout rates. All these things we've known for a very long time, and we actually do know how to solve a lot of these problems. And today you're going to hear from three distinguished speakers and presenters who are actually going to talk about very successful programs, about some of the things that they're doing to address some of these challenges and open up the opportunities. Our three distinguished speakers today, I'll start, I'll quickly introduce them and they will speak in this order. Lorraine Charles, who is the co-founder of an executive director of a social enterprise called NAMAL that works on skills development, training, mentorship, and links the private sector, mostly for vulnerable populations. But she also does a lot of other interesting work as part of the University of Cambridge on the digital skills and digital work. Lorraine today will speak about some of the successes they've had on online training, and I think this will set it up very well for our next speaker, Kate Bain from the Department of State, the US government, a global program officer who oversees the Office of English Language Programs, the online professional English program for the State Department, reaching over 90 countries. And so, Kate, I think you have a lot to share, not just what happens in the US, but how you actually do successfully deliver these courses to countries where there's very low connectivity, very low technology. And then to wrap it up, we'll have Elizabeth Miller, who's really got experience as a teacher over 20 years at all levels of the education sector. And very interestingly, she'll talk about credentialing. We do know that one of the things that are important in lifelong learning, at least in promoting motivation, is some sort of recognition, right? And digital credentialing has become a very huge and interesting topic. And I'm also looking forward to learning a lot from Elizabeth. With that reflection and introduction, I now turn it over to Lorraine to kick us off. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to start by talking about my organization, NAMAL, and what we do and who we work with. So as Alex said, thank you for the very kind introduction. We work with refugees and vulnerable populations. We provide the soft skills to help them work online. So that's kind of my tagline, online learning for online earning. Because one of the reasons that brought me to developing NAMAL is I feel that education without a link to livelihood is kind of not, it's kind of an education in vain, especially for the populations which I work with. So when I first started my organization, I'm a researcher, and I sort of founded this organization through a gap that I found in my research. A lot of the education for refugees didn't have a direct link to employment. And this is why I found NAML. And at the time I was working remotely myself, and I saw the huge potential for refugees to work remotely. But of course, how do you work remotely? Well, learning remotely is sort of the best way to set you up to work remotely. So this is sort of how our program is set up. So our program sort of has 4 main elements. We have an online program, which is a self-paced course, again, like a MOOC, but kind of different to a MOOC, because supported with each module is a virtual workshop. Because I believe that the whole MOOC idea is well and good. And I think when MOOCs started, there was a huge movement thinking this was going to revolutionize education. It didn't, because MOOCs are lonely and we're social creatures, and for real engagement, we need to have interaction. So this is why when I set up NAML, we had the virtual workshops to complement each module of the MOOC. So, because this is the word, So these workshops are hosted on Zoom, they're interactive, they're small groups, and they're engaging. The training is done with technical training partners, and I'll talk about the partners after. But the third part of the program is mentoring. Again, reinforcing the skills they've learned in the first part of the program, one-on-one mentoring, again, virtual mentoring. And we believe that the mentoring relationship with someone who's from a different part of the world, different culture, again, mimics the sort of environment they'd have when they actually work online. So again, virtual mentoring, which is linked to internships. So again, remote work. So this is kind of the model which we've set up. If we go to the next slide. So again, we aim to have a holistic model. Not only are we providing remote work skills, we have partners which do the entire ecosystem that one needs to work remotely. So whilst we do the remote work skills, we have partners who do the English language training and technical training partners, because obviously we know to work remotely, you need to have the skills. It's great having the English language, it's great having the soft skills, but you have to be able to do the skills. And some of these programs, partners that we work with are also all virtual, and some are face-to-face. So we do employ the blended model, even though all of our programs are done online. And we know that before COVID, as Alex said, there was a huge movement thinking that the whole remote work ecosystem and remote learning ecosystem was kind of niche. A few universities, a few systems, but with COVID, this really proved that we need to think of something different. And again, I felt that when the whole shift happened, remote learning began to try to mimic what happened in the classroom. And we know that that's not really viable. Mimicking the type of model you have in the classroom, simply shifting it online doesn't work. So this is why I feel that remote learning needs to sort of be reconceptualized. And this is sort of what I had in mind when I set up NAML. And considering we set this up before COVID sort of proved our point. Whilst for months and years I was talking about remote work, the reaction I was getting was, well, that's not possible. We can't all work remotely. Hire refugees, we can't hire refugees. When COVID happened, suddenly the floodgates opened and I got all the attention, because everyone had to suddenly shift to working remotely and learning remotely. And people realized that this is viable, not just for the select few, not just for the digital nomads, but for everyone. But again, reconceptualizing what it should look like. And, but if we look at the skills which we need to work online, according to WEF, the top skills which are needed for 2025 are analytical thinking, innovation, active learning, complex problem solving, creativity and critical thinking, and analysis. But how do we teach these things? Even in a face-to-face setting, these skills are non-tangible. How do we teach these online? And this is sort of what we try to do through our, through the interactions which we create, through the relationships which we create on our program. This is what we try to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but we recognize that these are the skills which are required for individuals to not only navigate the remote workspace, but also the co-located working environment. So this is why we sort of set up this really holistic model, which involves the English language, the technical training partners, and the remote work readiness. So let's move to the next slide. So this is kind of an example of what our workshops look like and some of the challenges we face. So as I said, we work with refugees and vulnerable populations. And again, the challenges are what we expect: low bandwidth and lack of devices. So when we have our workshops, I'm going to show you a little snippet of what our workshops look like. So next slide, please. So this is happened last week: problem solving and innovative ideation. Next slide. So if you see, this is kind of what it looks like. Lots of Zoom in the Zoom meeting. Lots of screens with pictures, and most of the pictures are from our team. We have the trainer, we have my program manager, we have the 2 facilitators. And of everyone shown on the screen, only 3 of those are students. And if you think each workshop has 12 students and 3 or 4 of my team. So it just goes to show the bandwidth issues we have. Sometimes we put them in breakout rooms to have people leaving and joining. But we've learned to adapt to these models. Next slide, please. And again, by having a really innovative model of learning, the students are really engaged. So in this activity, the students are able to write inside those boxes. So really keeping the engagement going. And for this particular activity, after they practiced together as a group, they went to breakout rooms and did the activity all again. Next slide, please. And again, after the breakout rooms, they all come back and they all report. And again, you see the smile on her face. The students are really, really engaged. They love the fact that they're able to communicate with each other. And these students have been with each other for the last 4 months. So they started back in October. But this is, in our sessions, is the first time they're actually in small groups, because the other parts of the program, they're in much larger groups. And this is sort of the core of what we believe: small groups, really, really close engagement to really get them thinking. And also if we think this sort of mimics the way they'll be working in the future if they work remotely, because when we work remotely, we are never in a room with 50 people. We're in a room with very small teams. We're expected to interact. We're expected to contribute. And this is this is what we're trying to mimic in our sessions. So I want to talk about some of the challenges, and not particularly this program, because this particular program that I showed you is with MIT React. And again, these students are pretty much the best, the best of the best in terms of refugees, recruited from all over the world. We also ran a program in Jordan in the summer in Zaatari refugee camp, and vulnerable Jordanians outside the refugee camp in Mafraq. And this is where, we had the massive challenges. The students in Zaatari, connectivity is problematic, to say the least. So whilst we try to have engagements with partners, in the camp when COVID happened and there was lockdown, how do we manage to get the students engaged, online? We managed to get dongles to the students via UNHCR connection in the private sector, but again, these were very difficult to navigate. So I think for the populations which I work with, and for all populations in the developing world, the big elephant in the room is connectivity. This is the one thing which really prevents, I think, online learning from being as expansive as it should be. And for me, online learning and online earning, because I believe that certainly for refugees and potential migrants, by giving them the opportunity to choose whether they want to migrate, by giving them the opportunity to work where they are, the opportunity to learn where they are, the whole migration pattern might might change because people migrate not because they have to for education, not because they have to for work, but because they want to. If they're given the opportunity for dignified jobs and high quality learning where they are, then people might think more carefully about whether they want to leave or not. And this is one issue which I feel is considered but not often spoken about, the whole idea of internet for everyone. And it seems like a lofty idea, but it doesn't cost much. There's an organization called Alliance for Affordable Internet, and they did a report, and to have the entire world connected with connectivity, it's going to cost $400 billion. Jeff Bezos can pay for that himself. It really isn't a lot. So we really need to have, to have much larger strides in order to get connectivity to the world. I didn't plan to talk so much about connectivity, but for me, that's the biggest challenge with the work that I do to promote remote work and remote learning. Hang on, I see I've got a couple of questions. I'll go to the questions really quickly. So how long are participants involved in the program? It depends. So normally the program, as I said, we work with the technical training partners. So we adapt our program to suit whatever program they do. So really between 6 to 9 months. But our program is really flexible, and the participants are recruited via the technical training partner because they need to have the aptitude to do the job. So in a way, our soft skills are perhaps easier, if I want to say that, for people to access, but the technical training, the coding, the data science, though that's the one that requires a much larger aptitude, much greater aptitude in terms of ability to do the work. Thank you. Another question.
Lorraine,
yeah.
Lorraine, that in the interest of time, that we will take these questions at the end.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. I'm done. Okay.
So that we can move on now to Kate. Thank you very much, Lorraine, and clearly a lot of interesting questions there. One thing we could also do is respond some of the questions in the chat. In real time. So may I now invite Kate Bain.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alex and Lorraine. That was such a great presentation. Really got me thinking. I love that idea of mentorship, and I'm thinking, how can we incorporate that in our program? Anyhow, but lots of great ideas. So thank you for that. Yeah, so I'm Kate Bain, and I'm in the office, if we could go to the next slide, the Office of English Language Programs at the U.S. Department of State. And then on the next slide, you'll see that we're housed, there are lots and lots of bureaus within the U.S. Department of State. We are in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And in that bureau are offices like Education USA, you may have heard of, or Fulbright, things like that. So our programming is based on the Fulbright-Hays Act from 1961, which helped us to add programming related to educational and cultural exchanges that would focus on promoting mutual understanding between the people of the US and the people of other countries. So our particular office within that bureau, the Office of English Language Programs, as you may guess from the name, is focused on programs that are related to English language learning and teaching. So we have several different programs. And then on the next slide, you'll see the program I'm going to be speaking about today, which is the Online Professional English Network program, which used to be called American English eTeacher. So you can go to this website to find more information about the program. But I wanted to give sort of an overview of the program and ways in which we try to address some of those issues that Alex and Lorraine mentioned related to accessibility, connectivity, that sort of thing. We recognize, as I know you all do, that those issues and challenges, there's not really, yeah, so if Jeff Bezos donated, maybe there'd be some easy solution. But apart from that, there isn't just one thing that works. What we think of in our approach is that there are many things that help, and hopefully many things that can help participants be more successful. So anyways, so the Online Professional English Network is all about online courses for educators of English as a foreign language. And all of our courses are designed to be administered not in the US, if that makes sense. So all of our participants, so we do have some US participants, but we design them for international participants and primarily for English as a foreign language educators. If we can go to the next slide, and I'll share as briefly as I can, these are the different programs and offerings within the open program. So we have global online courses, and these are the main sort of meat and potatoes of our program. These courses are 8-week courses. We deliver these courses on the Canvas learning management system, which is very free and accessible. That's partly why we use Canvas, and maybe you guys are familiar with that platform. We've also found that Canvas learning management system works pretty well in low bandwidth areas and is accessible in places where other things might be blocked, like where maybe Facebook or Google are blocked. Canvas overall seems to be doing well still. These 8-week courses are pretty intensive. They require about 8 to 10 hours of work per week for our English language professionals. And they're on topics. Actually, I'll share in a little bit what those topics are. Actually, if you can go two slides forward. Thanks. These are some of the topics that we have. So English and we partner with US universities to develop and deliver these courses. And we also partner with, we have a cooperating agreement with FHI 360. And I know a couple folks from FHI are here today. It's great to see you. FHI 360 works with these universities that you can see here or institutions, including World Learning, on these topics. So critical thinking is an important topic, obviously, educational technology, professional development for teacher trainers, assessment, teaching young learners, that sort of thing. And we have other topics as well that are either in development or not listed here. So then if we can go back up 2 slides, thanks. So those are the global online courses are sort of one of the main piece of our program. These courses are created by FHI 360 and in partnership with our office and US universities, and someone needs to be nominated by a person in a US embassy. So the US embassy folks nominate participants who they know can meet the requirements of the course and how rigorous it is. I'll quickly go over the rest of these programs and then share how we try to make these courses and offerings more accessible for a global audience. So global online courses are more intensive, smaller cohorts, lots of interaction with the other participants in the course and with the instructor. Then we have MOOCs. As Lorraine mentioned, her program also offers a lot of MOOCs, and those are obviously open for anyone who wants to join them. We've also, as Lorraine mentioned, found that interacting in real time, either face-to-face or in person in a workshop, or we call them MOOC camps, is really beneficial and really helps our passing rate. We have a really high passing rate of about 35% to 40% for our MOOCs, which we know is really high compared to the global 5% or so of actual people who complete MOOCs. And that's because of our excited alumni. We have a lot of people around the world who love to facilitate either online or face-to-face synchronous sessions and go over the course material and discuss it. As Lorraine mentioned, that interactive piece is very, very crucial to bringing online learning to life and to retention and to completion and all that sort of thing. So we are very happy that we partner with RELOs and US embassies and alumni to host those. And they often do that on their own initiative, our alumni. We have regional online courses which address foreign policy goals and are maybe on more English for specific purposes topics, such as English for disaster management, English for tourism, that sort of thing. We have webinars, which are shorter pieces that we broadcast on our Facebook page and through Zoom. And then our open educational resources is probably one of the biggest pieces as well of our program. Everything that we create is created with Creative Commons by attribution or Creative Commons by licensing. So if someone wants to use anything from our course, they are welcome to do so. We ask that they pay tribute to the university who created that, or maybe or our office or the presenter for a webinar. But we hope and have seen that many people use the courses, the content in the course, and the course cartridges in other ways that might fit their context better. And of course, we see some of that impact and some of it we don't see. So we just are happy to share all of the resources that we have, and in a way that can be sort of multiplied after someone takes the course. Yes, this is open. The MOOCs are open to all countries. Yeah, the global online courses, the MOOCs and the webinars are open to anyone who would like to join. And I'll put the link for the website in the chat box so that you can find all the information about all these different programs there, or you can just see it there, the openenglishprograms.org. And then we have a community of practice for alumni. So that just helps keep people engaged. So let me go to the next slide, which is something that FHI3, this is very small to see, but if you go to this link here that I'm putting in the chat, you can find the PDF version of this, the online course accessibility checklist that FHI developed in partnership with us, which is a wonderful tool, and you can feel free to use it and use it for your own purposes, or adapt it for your own purposes. So these are the things when our partners at FHI 360 work with US university partners, these things must be in place for our online courses and are related to accessibility. So there are many aspects of accessibility, as you all probably know. Some of those are connectivity, just the basic. Some of those are how much money someone has to download Microsoft Office Suite, or or which device they're using it on. So these are some of the different things that we have in place for our courses. So I won't go into all of them, but you can kind of see for yourself, or you can go to that page there and find the online course accessibility checklist and go ahead and take it and use it however you'd like to. But basically, we try to make our course content as accessible both online and offline as possible. So things that we keep in mind are, we have module packets for each module. So most courses have 5 to 8 modules, and that's about a week's worth of instruction and learning activities. Each of those weeks has a module packet. So for example, if I don't have a computer at home, but I can go to an American Space or a Wi-Fi, a cyber cafe, I forgot what those were called for a second. I can go and maybe download some of that, or I can even download it on my phone, read through the material, work through the material, then come back and when I can be online again and complete that material. So that's part of why we also have descriptions for images if they won't load. We have transcripts of all of our videos. So if a video that is in our course doesn't load or isn't accessible, that people can see the entire transcript and get all of the information that they would need. We try to make sure that no assignment needs any sort of software to complete. So if there's a requirement for a document to be uploaded, for example, we also require that, or give an option for people to be able to put it in plain text in a text document, because a lot of people don't have access to Google Docs, or they might not have access to Microsoft products, that sort of thing. So those are just some different aspects of our course accessibility. Again, it's not that this cures all the issues, but these are accommodations that we've been trying to make and have been really successful with. And as Lorraine mentioned, you know, we've and as Alex mentioned, we've known that these issues exist for quite some time with accessibility. And we also have known the effectiveness of online instruction. And something for our program, in a sort of a silver lining of this very difficult time that we've gone through as the world in a global pandemic, is people do recognize more and more of the value and efficacy of online instruction. But then these components absolutely need to be in place, and we need to continue thinking of ways to improve accessibility wherever we can. So, and then just the next couple of slides, yeah, you can see here, this is where we broadcast our American English live series, the webinar series. So that's the Facebook page where we broadcast it to. We have folks who do not have access to Facebook, so we also provide an invitation to those people on Zoom. And so people can join us in either way. And then you can see the next slide just shows a little bit closer of a snapshot of a presenter. And you can go to the next slide, because I'll just chat a little bit about, to sort of lead up to our next speaker. For all of our programs, we offer certificates or digital badges. So as you may know, certificates are very important around the world and are a great way to reward people for their work in a course. We've seen people who take one of our courses get more leadership opportunities in their communities as educators. We've seen them cascade new knowledge by, you know, sharing workshops and being seen as leaders because of these certificates that they're able to get, and because of the learning that took place in each course. And we are very excited to be able to see that. And digital badging has been a part of that as well. So we offer digital badges for each webinar that people attend. And we also offer digital badges and certificates for each course. And so one thing that we are still, I think, sort of on the new end of things with is the micro-credentialing piece and the showing of how important those badges can really be. And so I'm really excited to hear more from Elizabeth about digital badging and some of the innovative programs and updates that are going on with that. So I think that's about it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Kate. We will now move on to Elizabeth. Reminder that you please do post any questions or comments you have in the chat. We would like to make this very interactive. We'll also try, I think we are doing very well on time. So after Elizabeth, we'll queue it up for Q&A, but I will call on the audience as well to contribute because we've got a lot of expertise on this call. Thank you. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Alex, so much. Appreciate the opportunity. I was struck by something you said, Alex, at the beginning about happiness and the critical components of happiness in our work. The opportunity for meaningful work and the opportunity to grow as a professional person in your work, to advance your skills, to open the doors to opportunities that you may not even have known existed. And so one of the ways that we're really a tactic that we're seeing being incredibly impactful for lots and lots of folks and lots of places are digital badges. And because you have come to this session, I'm going to give you a badge. So if you check in chat, there's a link. You could have scanned that QR code that's on that slide that's up right now. But if you click that link, the system's going to ask you to enter your email address. It needs to know where to send the badge. If all goes well, you'll see digital confetti, which is the best part of every day as far as I'm concerned. Because I really want you to see badges in action. Kate's program, to her last point, has awarded about 85,000 badges, which is remarkable because, and we'll just go to the next slide. When you think about digital badges, they're not just a sticker. Stickers have their value. I was a teacher. I handed out a lot of gold stars and other assorted shiny shapes on charts. And it was motivating for my students. And when I did a whole bunch of adult education, giving people a recognition, really short, kind of bite size, yes, that was great. You've got that piece, was helpful for them. It is motivating. But digital badges have qualities that expand their utility for learners and for organizations. And as you're kind of considering them, I think it's helpful to know what those qualities are. So hence this slide. First, a badge is not a sticker. It is a digital data container. My engineers I work with would say it is a data object, but it has inside of it, behind the pretty picture, it has all sorts of information, and what information you include and how you use those metadata fields that you can create when you build a badge varies wildly. If you look at the badge that I sent you, you've got an email that has the badge in it, and then you can see all of that badge metadata. If you click through, you'll see that there's information about what you had to do in order to get this badge, what it means, what it represents. You've got information about the organization that is behind the awarding of the badge so that you can learn more. You can use the badge as a conduit to even more information, or to the sign up for our MOOC, or register for our class, or attend this webinar. You can use that badge to guide the recipients of the badge to more information, because a badge is, well, as a digital data container, it is persistent. By that I mean it lives outside of the badge awarding platform. Now, Badger is a badge awarding platform, but there are others. There are lots of others, and you can use really any of them to award your badges. But the badge exists outside of that platform, and it exists outside of the awarding organization. So badges typically don't live behind some kind of a paywall or a firewall. They are a data container that's handed to the learner, and the learner then controls the evidence of their own learning. We think that not just data privacy is critical, but that data ownership is an increasingly important value in the world, that people really have to own their own stuff, and they have to be able to control it outside of any other entity that may want to speak to that control. So a badge is persistent. You hand it to the learner and they possess it and can do all sorts of things with it. A badge is portable. So one of the things that learners can do is they can move those badges around. They can store them and share them in a bunch of different places in a bunch of different ways. They, again, have control over their data. Badges can be shared. We make some easy tools, and other platforms make some easy tools to share badges to social media platforms, or, well, I have a badge in my email signature. So everybody that gets an email from me sees that badge and can click on that badge and open up that data container and see kind of all the information about that badge in it. Badges can be included on resumes that are delivered electronically and posted in e-portfolios, and there's lots and lots of things that you can do to share your badges. Badges are independently verifiable. They can be verified apart from the organization that awarded them and separate from the learner who received them, so that the viewers of a badge can confirm that it's real, that it's not just an image dragged off Google, and that it was really awarded to the person who says it was awarded to them. So independently verifiable. Badges can be stacked together so that you can build larger, more meaningful credentials. There's a lot of ways to do that. I'll show you how we kind of recommend it being done, but you can stack badges together. And I think especially for adult learners who are trying to expand, to build off of an existing skill set, which that's how adult learners tend to approach new learning. I know something, I want to know more, or I want to advance the skills that I have in that particular area. That being able to stack and scaffold and ladder those skills up for them is a kind of a critical tactic. So badges can be stacked. Badges can be aligned to skills. There's some work going on in the world that's making that ever easier to do, but it's absolutely doable right now. And I think skills alignment really provides background for that particular badge against the larger context of a skills taxonomy or a competency framework or an educational standard. Those go by different names in different areas, but it's all the same. It's really, what do you need to know and do in order to be able to do this next thing that you want to know and do? So badges can be skills aligned, and badge data is machine readable. The reason that becomes increasingly important is that you can use that data then to start to look at a stack of data that a particular learner may possess, and to think about how you can expand that. We'll talk more about that in just a second. So we can go to the next slide. So your learners, if they're not already, they will very quickly be getting digital badges for all sorts of reasons from all sorts of places. So higher ed is awarding badges for credit and non-credit programs, lots and lots of professional learning, getting badges awarded at higher ed around the world. Professional certifications from trade or professional associations that do a lot of training, and from just places like the Project Management Institute, which does, that provides the PMP and provides training before you become a project management professional. There's tons of those entities that exist and are providing lots and lots of high rigor, high value certifications. There is a ton of on-the-job training that's being captured in badges. So everything from kind of management training, how do you kind of move up in your organization, to here's a new job role that you might want to undertake, and how do we kind of move you across the organization into a new role. Tons of that going on right now. And then things that may not have a ton of rigor or assessment behind them, but are a critical part of people's really own personal development. So for instance, volunteer organizations that are providing digital badges to people who volunteer for them, because that work is extremely important to the organization. It's important to the community. And it speaks to that person's kind of the values and experience in places that might not be directly related to their own professional lives. So those badges are already pouring into an ecosystem. And this is why this becomes increasingly important to capture that data. And I'll let you go to the next slide, please. The goal of the ecosystem that's being built around digital badges right now, and there's a good deal of work going on that's making this kind of actionable, is for every labor market participant to be represented in the market in ways where they control their own representation, where they control their own data. But to be represented in a way that a data set can represent them, that they can hand to other entities, whether it's the Office of English Education, or a company that they want to go to work for, or a college or university that they want to step into, but hand that data set and say, okay, this is what I know and can do, represented by all this digital data. What is next for me? Where can this take me? What can I add into this, my knowledge and skills and ability and experience? What can I add that will get me to a thing, well, that I might not even know exists quite yet? That data set exists right now for you. When you build a resume, one of the things that you do is you look across all the information about you, everything you've done, your degrees, your certifications, your experience, your volunteer activities, your skills and competencies, and you kind of curate that, and you stack it up and send it off for a particular job. So you've already got that data, but you might not have it in a way that is easily consumed by some other organization or by some other platform. So there is an effort going on right now to ensure that every learner is really represented by that stack of digital data. In the United States, it's called the Learning and Employment Record. I just dropped a couple of links into chat that I won't spend a whole lot of time talking about, but those are some really helpful information about the development of a learning and employment record, and some ways that some really influential organizations are thinking about using such a thing once it exists. So feel free to take a look at that. I will say that digital badges are an easy way to populate that record for each learner. The technology is simple. It is just as straightforward as it can be. Badges are quick to design and build. They are easy to award, so you can push them out to a learner. There's just all sorts of tools that are available to folks that want to award digital badges that make this all a really easy tool to use to populate that learning and employment record. And then the ability, and I'm just going to let you go to the next slide. I'm watching my time here. I'm waving my hands a lot. I'm so glad that you all can see my hands, because I make a lot more sense when you can. The ability for a learner to not only see kind of a big group of digital information about them, digital validations of their own efforts, but also to see how those things fit in a learning journey. So one of the tools that we're seeing organizations use more and more is, in this case, a pathway that really shows a learner or a group of learners, this is how you get from here to here. These are the steps that you take. These are the pieces of the puzzle that stack together for you into, at the end of it, really a larger, more meaningful credential, one that represents effort over time, some deep dives into some topics that might be particularly critical for the job that you want, the role you want. So being able to lay out that path for learners, and then I'll let you go to the next slide, let them see their progress along that pathway as they gather those badges. In this particular system, badges are they're the penny that you drop. When you get that badge and it drops into the system, then you can see that you've gotten it. It lights up on the pathway. The badge is in your possession, and your progress is also available there. So for learners to be able to see a learning journey, a chunk at a time, and then to monitor their own progress across it is just an additional, incredibly powerful utility of digital credentials. And I will let you go to the next slide, please. And then once learners have those badges in hand, or have those pathways in hand, or both, and if you just click one more time on the slide, there you go. Sorry, I thought I'd taken out all the animation, but I failed, is the ability for a learner to share their badges, to expose them to the world. And this is just a simple little tool that's part of our platform that makes that easy to do. For the learner then, being provided that that data object, that data container that has all sorts of information about what they've accomplished, what they know and can do, what they're certified in, all of that. And then on the organization side, for the awarders, the issuers of a badge, I'll let you go to the next slide, being able to track what badges individuals have, what progress they've made along pathways, so that as an organization, you can really quickly and easily see where gaps have opened up, where people have gotten stuck. So I spent a lot of time in the classroom. I don't know, I calculated at some point that I had spent 5,000 hours standing and delivering professional development to adults. A lot of time. When I was in a classroom, it didn't take me very long to know who was struggling, who was having problems. There's body language and there's tone and there's all sorts of things, all sorts of information that you get when you're in a room with people. When we moved into an online space, one of the struggles that I had, even when before we had a pandemic, when I moved into doing kind of online training, was the feedback was so suppressed that I really struggled to know. People would have to tell me very directly, I do not understand what you are saying. And that's really hard for most people to do, to raise their hand and say, I don't get this. Can you tell me that a different way? So if I had been able to use kind of measures that I could see, that I could award to people as they picked up the skills or competencies or knowledge or experience that I was trying to provide to them, and then I could see where they got stuck. I could see where they stopped on a particular journey. That would have helped me in all sorts of ways that I just didn't have the tools for that kind of back in the day, which was only 5 years ago, but seems like maybe an eternity ago. So as you consider digital credentials for your learners and for your organization, I would encourage you to our website has some success stories that can really kind of frame out what the opportunities are. And we'd of course be happy to answer any questions about that. As you're really thinking about how do you take people, how do you increase their happiness, how do you expose to them the opportunities that are available to them, digital badges are really, they're not a strategy in that, but they're a tactic. Thank you. Alex, I'm done waving my hands. So.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Very fascinating subject, and hope to hear more from you and from the other participants. So what I've done, I've taken the liberty as the moderator to reinterpret some of the questions and also to add some of the frequently asked questions when it comes to online learning. I've categorized them kind of in four big buckets. I have questions around what I call the life cycle of online training, or I'm using training very loosely, online learning. I think there were a number of questions around, Lorraine was asked, how do you recruit, right? Kate talked about some of the strategies they use. Actually, Kate, you did talk about, that the embassy has to recommend, but it'd be interesting to hear how the embassy reaches those people. But I think there's a general question is really, how do we reach participants that we want to recruit for training programs, especially in the developing world? How long should ideally a program be, right? I think there were questions that were asked on, how long are the different programs? And Elizabeth, it will be interesting to see if duration of the program has any impact on the badge, right? Do you get an extra star if you a longer program or a shorter program? There were questions around completion, right? And how to track completion. I think there's also a very big known problem around high dropout rates, especially when you go online or if you're doing any sort of remote learning. And what are any strategies to not only to track, but to encourage completion? One question that wasn't specifically asked, but I think is important, is what happens after the course is over, right? how do we keep it? How do we keep track of the alumni? Is it important? And then there were questions around cost, which Lorraine very diplomatically sidesteps. But I think it's a very, very tough question to answer, right? And I think maybe we should you know we should talk about what we know about some of the cost drivers. I wonder whether actually recently I was trying to look out. Is there any kind of reference cost for this program, for like a typical online program? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of studies that have been done about, the costs of online delivery. They vary widely, right? I wonder whether there's any kind of reference out there that people might know. And what are some of the strategies to reduce costs? Lots of questions around connectivity and some responses from some of the participants. I think offline was mentioned. I spend a lot of time in my work thinking about connectivity. So maybe I'll share my perspective after we hear back from the presenters and the audience. And then some kind of very specific questions around the badges, right? What's inside that badge? I mean, Elizabeth, you spoke some of that. There was an interesting question about the relationship with blockchain certificates. And I guess a question for me is, do you see digital credentialing and blockchain certificates kind of converging and being one and the same? There were kind of very practical questions of, how do you show that badge to, a potential employer or a university if you're applying for further education? And then the whole question of how do we get more people to understand and accept badges? So I please encourage the audience to respond to some of these questions and share some of your own experiences. You can type in the chat box or you can raise your hand. We will be monitoring the raised hands. But let me first call upon our speakers in the order they spoke, Lorraine, Cara, and Elizabeth, to reflect on some of these questions.
Okay, so maybe I want to start at the cost because you said I sidestepped it, Alex. So I will go straight for it. So it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure if there's a reference, but in my perception and in all my interactions with donors, especially with the populations I work with, the cost per beneficiary is the thing that I hear all the time, and I try to discard that because and I always say I want to create a program for the students that I work with that I would be happy for my children to do, and you don't put your children on a program that's going to cost $100 per student. You pay, throughout the world, people pay, a significant proportion of their salary toward education. So why should we then adopt a different model to what we do naturally as parents? Because the people that we're serving are refugees, are from the developing world. So when I created the program, I looked for the best. I wanted the best trainers. I got the best trainers. It is not cheap. So right now we're working on ways to minimize the cost, because of course as an organization you aren't attractive to a donor no matter how good your program is if your cost is too high. But on the other hand, my mother used to say, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. You really want, at the end of the day, I want to create a program that I would be happy for my children to do. So I'm not giving you a direct answer to cost, but that's sort of the thinking that I follow with cost. Is it
maybe how do you manage costs? Maybe that's a more real, kind of pragmatic question.
Very good question, Alex. So at the moment we're bootstrapping. So I'm managing costs by the love of my friends and my colleagues. So at this particular program we have, because we're right now we're proving the model. We're proving that this works, that this can work long term and is sustainable. Right now we're having quite expensive trainers donate their time for us, create a model, and then get those trainers to train people who would cost slightly less. So we have the same quality of training, and then we give people from the populations in which we're serving the opportunity to learn and to earn money, but learning from those that cost a lot of money who work with the corporate sector. So that's one of our strategies to manage our costs.
Thank you, Lorraine. Kate, not Cara, Kate.
Sure. Yeah, for our cost, we are funded by US taxpayers, and we in the Office of English Language Programs receive a certain amount of money for each program, and then we work with our cooperating partner for that program. And so, as I mentioned before, we work with FHI 360 for our open program. So we're very lucky. So there's, we're not in a position of looking for funding. We have a set amount and we use that set amount. I will say that virtual programming compared to other exchange, when we're not in COVID, compared to other exchange programs, is for the program cost much cheaper than obviously in-person exchanges. And we have really been able to work with FHI 360 to build some efficiency into our cost effectiveness. But and then the other piece I would say is that the fact that we create open educational resources is a way that we are trying to be really good stewards of those taxpayer dollars, because once a person has taken a course or been involved with some of our virtual programming, they're able to share that with whomever, which is an amazing multiplier effect, and is something that we, as I mentioned before, can sometimes measure, but mostly we don't see the thousands of folks who are being able to benefit even if they don't take a particular course. And then I was thinking about addressing the recruitment. So Alex, you kind of mentioned that recruitment piece. So again, we're very lucky because we have a built-in recruitment mechanism, which is our US embassies and folks in the US embassies who are called regional English language officers. Those are foreign service specialists who have 2 to 4 year terms most of the time at different embassies, and are in charge of doing all programming related to things in our office, not just open, but also English language fellows, and also this other program called the English Access Micro Scholarship Program. So we have people on the ground when we're not in COVID. A lot of them are here in the US at the moment, but we have people on the ground who are involved in many programs and are also involved in things and events related to the US Embassy, which obviously opens up the recruitment pool quite a bit. So some of our RELOs, regional English language officers, recruit via virtual or in-person conferences. A lot of people recruit via, they recruit via social media. So most US embassies around the world have social media pages, and often a RELO also has those. We in our global office have a Facebook page, 2 Facebook pages, especially more than that, but American English at State and American English for Educators Facebook pages that have been incredibly popular. We have like graphics on grammar, idioms, that sort of thing. We have a following of over 4 million people. And so that's obviously a tool that we use to recruit, especially for our MOOCs and webinars. And so we have some luxuries for sure, to be honest, with recruitment. But we found that a hodgepodge of tools is the best way to go. So, I would say if you're thinking about programming, coming at it from all ends in terms of recruitment. So the face-to-face events that you're able to be part of, finding personal connections once we're not in this pandemic. Social media, maybe even paying for ads here and there to boost your reach. Email communication with whomever you have contact with, webinars and live events that can broadcast the things that you're doing. We found a lot of success with our Facebook Live events in terms of reach, which helps us to be able to promote our other programs as well, globally and regionally. So those are some of the things that we do for recruitment. And I'm happy to talk about one other thing, unless we want to move to Elizabeth and then go.
Please go ahead, Kate.
Okay. Okay, great. I see I have the up. Oh, is it possible that I could share my screen? Because there was the question about how long programming can be. And so if I can't share my screen, no problem, I'll just chat. I think maybe I need to be made a co-host or something like that. Anyways, so in my opinion, okay, let me try one more time here. I think you have to stop sharing. Oh, there we go. Sorry, everyone. Thank you. Here we go. So Lorraine kind of mentioned with her programming, it depends on the length of time. And I'd say that's the basic point. It depends, and it's up to your audience and what they need, want, their level of prior experience with online learning, etc. So we have these different sort of lengths of time. So we have our webinars, and sometimes we in the office will jokingly refer to our webinars as a gateway drug to longer term online learning. These are open to an unlimited number of participants. When we're creating these webinars, we do have a following of repeat folks, but we also are thinking about the people who maybe have not taken a webinar before or done online learning before. Now that we're in COVID, a lot more people have experienced that than prior. But these are 1 hour sessions. You can get a digital badge for attending one, or you can get a certificate for attending 4 out of 6. So and then we advertise our MOOCs during these webinars. So then the MOOCs are also for unlimited. They're 5-week courses. We have self-paced and facilitated actually. And it's more self-study and peer-to-peer, but you can also get a digital badge and a certificate for doing those. And then perhaps your interest is piqued in being part of a smaller, more intensive course, and maybe you reach out to your regional English language officer or maybe your regional English language officer nominates you for these global online courses that are, like I said, more intensive. And then hopefully as an alum, you move on and continue to share your knowledge. So sort of to that point, I'd say it sort of depends. Length of programming. Obviously, a webinar is like a little taste of professional development. A MOOC is more, a GOC is more lots of information. And so I would say it depends, and you want to think about the different audiences that you have or could reach.
Alex, can I say something very quickly?
Sure, Lorraine.
For our purposes, in terms of length, because our programs are all geared toward employment, and you're often high school employment, the length of the programs are longer. So for example, with the programs we're running in Jordan, and hopefully the one we'll do in Lebanon, it's 6 months for the technical training, but very intensive, 5 days a week, full time, because they're learning to be web developers. So, going from what Kate said, it really depends on the purpose of the learning. For us, the purpose is to be really, to enter a job, yes, at a junior level, but quite a high skill, they need that length of time to go from very limited, not limited, but sort of moderate digital skills to become a coder. So our programs generally are longer because we want the learners to be employable at a high skill level.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lorraine. Let me turn it over to Elizabeth now. Kate ended with the fact that they give every participant a digital badge. there's some very specific questions around digital badges. What's inside them? How do you use them? Who accepts them? And after that, I'm going to turn to the audience. I will start with Jennifer, if you don't mind. You could speak a little bit about your experience with hybrid models that you find ideal. And then I'll be looking out for other people in the audience. But over to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks. And Kate, that slide you put up was so helpful because it illustrates what I think is a key understanding about digital badges. That badge can represent whatever you and your learners need for it to represent. It could represent a 4-year degree. It could represent Lorraine's 6-month intensive 40 hours a week web developer program and the successful completion of that. It can represent your attendance at a 1-hour webinar. Well, an hour and a half today. You got a badge for that if you click that little link. What it represents is really between you, your program, and your learners, and what is going to be impactful for them as a motivation tool, as keeping them moving forward. Every time you create a badge, part of that badge data is a definition. You're providing to the learner nomenclature to talk about the skills and competencies and experience and understandings that you've provided to them. One of the big needs, even with really experienced adult learners, is how do you articulate what you know and can do in the language of the market that you're talking to? And you can just give that paragraph of language to learners inside of that digital badge data. So what it represents, how big it is, whether it's closer to the sticker end of the continuum or closer to the credential end of the continuum, that's really about you and your program and the needs of your particular learners. How often you award a badge, what skills that badge acknowledges or represents. To answer a very specific question in the list, when you build a badge, there's a badge class or category, the basics of that badge. And then when you award the badge, you can include learner-specific information at the time of badge award, and kind of how you balance those things and how you use them and what programs you would ever do that second piece for. That really completely up to you. I would, again, recommend to you some of the success stories that are on our website at badger.com. It's cleverly named website. Let me answer the blockchain question real quick. And I'm just going to drop a link into chat, an article that our CEO wrote. Blockchain is an interesting technology. It also feels like, in some cases, a solution in search of a problem. With digital badges, unless you're really talking about something that's very high stakes and hugely where there would be a lot of value, honestly, to hacking that credential, then we are not seeing applications for blockchain across most programs. The places we are seeing it is university transcripts. So really something where you would be able to, there's a program going on right now at Arizona State University. And if I can find the link real quick, I'll drop it into chat too. But ASU has built a blockchain with the help of Salesforce, and they are really starting to move transcripts, full transcripts into the blockchain. It's called the Trusted Learner Network. I'll try to find a link for that for you in just a minute. So there is some work on the very high end, the very lots of rigor, lots of time, lots of money, reasons that people might want to spoof those things. Other than that, blockchains are expensive. We don't recommend generally currency-based blockchains. They are more luring to hackers. So I wouldn't worry about blockchain, especially as I was getting started with credentialing. Let's see, what can a participant use their badge? How can they show this to employers? Lots of folks share their badges to a platform like LinkedIn or to Facebook or Twitter, or there's all sorts of social media where badges tend to be exposed. e-portfolio systems, and there are a bunch of them around the world. In your own a resume, if your resume is delivered electronically as a PDF, for instance, you can include that badge image that is then clickable to open up all of that badge metadata. As I said, I have a badge in my email signature. There's lots of places to expose them. On the employer side, there are, well, we work directly with the largest employer in the United States, Walmart, which has 1.5 million associates. And they are tracking employee upskilling and cross-skilling, and then incoming prospective job holders into their organization. They are starting to track lots of digital data, and they are specifically focused internally in using digital badges to capture and then to build an internal learning and employment record for each of their employees, so that they can see where their gaps are, what kind of training they need to provide, so that they can make sure that they've got a well-equipped workforce now and whatever the future has to bring. I think I hit all my questions, Alex. Did I miss anything that you can see?
No, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Let me give an opportunity because Jennifer Johnson made a couple of comments about hybrid models, and she also said that they use digital badges in their group. I wonder what that group is. So Jennifer, do you want to say a bit about yourself and maybe expound on these comments, please?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. And this has been so interesting. I think like each one of you, we could do a whole hour-and-a-half session on your work. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm with SID-US, which is a mobile learning provider, and we make learning available just with the call and text features of a super basic mobile phone. So we also can do it using WhatsApp, using our app. So we really have to, because we work a lot in very low resource settings.
Mm-hmm.
So we've really had to develop a solution that does not require internet access, just for all the very reasons all of you just mentioned. But one of the things that we've noticed is that, online learning seems to sometimes work best when it's really hybrid. So for example, sometimes we work with partners, RTI or Impact Ed or organizations like this, where we develop both, kind of an in-person and then a mobile or an online version in terms of our work. And I don't know if any of our presenters today have kind of worked on figuring that out as well, because we have found that to be really ideal, just because, we've learned that some content is best done online, and then the privacy maybe of mobile, and some really needs to be in a group setting. So I don't know if that's anything any of our speakers have tackled.
Yeah. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think, yes, we having groups be able to synchronously, whether in person or online, chat about what they're learning is incredibly helpful, and is partly why I think our programs have been so successful. So during non-COVID times, what we have done in the past, or what we've encouraged folks through our US embassies to do, is to, for example, host a webinar viewing session. So people will come together, watch the webinar together, and then discuss before and after some of the components of the webinar. We've seen, we call them MOOC camps, but they're pretty much the same as I think they're the same as the interactive workshops that Lorraine was mentioning for her programming, where people will decide to take a MOOC together, and then, almost similar to a book club, but not quite, meet together periodically throughout the MOOC. Again, whether virtually or in person, and that really does seem to enhance retention and excitement overall of our programs. So I think, and then the other thing too, that is a good incentive, is anytime you can recognize people through a certificate ceremony or a badge ceremony, something like that. So certificates and badges are a really important component of how we reward people for taking our courses, or how we, I should say, maybe acknowledge the work that they've done. And so, but yeah, so any of those components that can possibly done in a live or in-person setting definitely are helpful and generate enthusiasm for future learning as well. So.
For sure.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jennifer, you raised a very, very important point. In fact, I was planning to raise this same issue in my closing remarks. You know, I didn't hear much discussion around mobile delivery because it is probably the most widely accessible technology that we have in underserved, vulnerable communities, and certainly in many of the low and middle income countries. And I think you made a very good point that mobile doesn't mean kind of mobile internet, right?
For sure.
That SMS voice is still extremely powerful way of reaching learners, including delivering courses, recruiting them, you know, tracking them and things like that. So that's excellent. Jennifer, I wonder whether you could very quickly talk about the badging in your programs. You did talk about the fact that you issue digital badges, and then I'll go back to Lorraine and Elizabeth.
So yeah, we have just noticed that it depends on the country we're working in and the group of learners. But you know, so much of what Elizabeth was saying, and actually some of what Kate was saying too, because we find that badgers help people with the course completion piece, right? That you really want to get them over the line of completing the lesson, completing the courses. And so providing those digital badges or certificates are super important to getting people finished. And it also, you know, like I mentioned, it shows, it's something that they can show to their employer or to their potential employer that they have completed this course. And, you know, we've done a lot of work to try to match our badges with some of the international standards, for example, CASAS and others around English learning. So you know, badges are interesting because they have to be really thought out and correct, but you really have to make them available because it is super important to getting people to finish the course, you know, finish the lesson, finish the course, finish the unit.
Thank you, Jennifer. As we close, I'm going to give Lorraine, Kate, and Elizabeth 30 seconds of closing remarks. Lorraine, mobile, and any other advice you have for us. Kate, security and privacy when you go online. And Elizabeth, you will close again by addressing privacy and security in the context of badges.
Absolutely.
So quickly, mobile's tough because our aim is employment, and really for remote employment, devices are what's required. So in a way that whilst learning is quite possible on mobile, even with Zoom, what you can do on a mobile compared to a laptop or PC is limited. So for our program participants, we really would prefer if they had devices. So, you know, I mean, our programs aren't large numbers that Kate does. So as part of our budget, we always try to provide devices to those that don't have it, because to work remotely, there is no other option.
Right.
Thank you, Lorraine. Over to Kate.
Yes, so I would just say in terms of security and privacy, obviously that's a top priority for State Department. We're always very interested in securing and protecting people's personally identifiable information. We have a portal that requires a login that we only give access to our colleagues within the program, where we offer that information. So we keep a very tight lid on that type of thing. Happy to talk more about it. But no, this has been a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be part of this panel, and I've learned so much today, and look forward to further talks about this. So thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kate. Elizabeth, the last word.
Yeah, I'll echo Kate. This was really fun. So thank you, Cara. Thank you, Alex, for the chance to do this. For privacy and security purposes, a badge is an inherently secure data container when it is awarded. The container is baked in a way that the information inside is accessible. You can see it, you can read it, you can consume it with other systems, but you cannot change it. It would take a lot of effort to crack a badge, and the value of cracking a single badge, no one's ever going to kind of do that. So it's inherently secure. For privacy reasons, our platform only collects email address. That's the typical unique identifier for a learner to receive a badge. Although I will note that you can award badges to phone numbers. And we see badges being awarded to phone numbers primarily in Africa, where there are systems that just it makes it easier to award to a phone number than to an email address. So that system is inherently secure. The awarding of badges, security is a big part of the program, and then the badge itself is naturally secure.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you to our audience and the organizers. I hope you've learned as much as I have. And I now hand it back to the organizers. Over to you, Paul and Cara.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Elizabeth, Kate, and Lorraine for your feedback. So just to wrap up, we just posted a survey in the chat box. It's in there a couple of different times. So we really do take your feedback and use it in future events. So we really would appreciate if you could fill out the survey just in advance of any other events that we do in the future. We really would appreciate your feedback. So again, thank you so much for attending today. Hope you stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to your participation at a future event. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.